For those of you that don't know me, I'm Mark Finney. I look after the International Hotel and Resorts team at Colliers, based in London. Where we cover mostly Europe, Middle East and Africa from there. Middle East is done separately through an office by one of my colleagues, Filippo. But we have fairly pointy elbows, so we've worked as far west as Panama, Mexico, Caribbean, and as far east as Kazakhstan and India. So in terms of the services that we offer, it's anything through from concepting at the beginning, market planning, financial feasibility, helping to find operators, and then obviously with funding solutions.
I'm Graham Mitchell. I'm with the Michael Earon Rush Group. We're developers and builders. We've been established for almost 50 years. We've completed over 16,000 hotel rooms for a variety of brands all across the UK and Ireland. And I'm in the property department of the company. So I look after everything from site identification and acquisition through the due diligence process, finding the right operator, finding the finance solution, and then right through the construction to the end game of either asset management or disposal.
Hi, Kevin Underwood from AECOM. I'm the global leader of leisure and culture, responsible for a number of disciplines from economic feasibility through master planning, architecture, engineering, quantity surveying, project management and cost management, so full service.
Good morning, Robert Shepherd, Chief Development Officer for IHG in Europe, which for us spans from the UK right across continental Europe, Russia and the CIS, Israel, back across Turkey and French-speaking North Africa. And it's my pleasure to lead a one-stop shop for all that we need to do to deliver signings, great designs and open hotels. So we take the investor from prospect to hotel owner, and it's a great team.
Mark Carnahan, Starwood Hotels. I handle Europe, Africa, Middle East. Also one-stop shop. I'll use that term from Robert here. Team of about 25 people that handle Europe, Africa, and Middle East, and we do all the underwriting for our deals, and we also source and finalize in transactions, which span across franchises, management contracts, and/or leases.
Okay, so you've got a great panel here, and you will get plenty of opportunities throughout the session to ask questions. So starting from the very beginning in terms of the site that we're going to take to build this hotel on, we hear location, 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 but Robert, how important is location?
I don't think anyone would expect me to say anything other than it's critical. And of course, that depends on which brand. So number one, is it right for a hotel? Is there the demand there? And then which brand? So if we take a Holiday Inn Express, and we can put that in a lot of places, a Hotel Indigo, very, very acutely defined micro location where that hotel is going to work. That needs to experience something of the neighborhood, and we actually have part of the DNA of the brand is the neighborhood story. So the 2 blocks around that hotel are fundamental to the experience that we want to create in that Hotel Indigo, because more and more travelers are looking for that personalized experience as opposed to a beige box on a corner somewhere that's relatively convenient to where they want to go. So I think even more important now.
So Bart, Robert's just touched there on the importance of micro-location, but also being in the right cities is important, isn't it? Targeting the right places.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we spend a lot of our time on at this point with over 1,200 hotels globally is more of a gap analysis. So we really look at our markets and we say, okay, what brands do we have in these specific cities, and where do we need to find hotels, and what locations to put those hotels in. We're pretty rigid about making sure that we don't go in and cannibalize our those market areas. Our brands are very distinct and separate, but at the same time we're drawing off of our Starwood Preferred Guest program, which is one of our big feeders. So we just have to realize that we got to make sure that we're in the right locations in those cities, but it also tells a story, a global story, as far as where we need to be and where we need to be in that city.
Mm-hmm. And Graham, coming from a sort of the constructor background, what are you looking for in a site?
It's probably the same thing. As developers, we will look for the sort of deliverability of the scheme, but as builders and with that experience, we'll also look for the buildability of it. So we'll look for factors that can influence the value of the site. Is it above an underground line? Is it adjacent to a river? And we'll come up using our experience with solutions for those sorts of issues. And there will 9 times out of 10 or more, there will always be a solution, but it will have a cost, and it will be a time cost, and it will be a money cost. But all of that has to then factor into your considerations when then you move on to consider the other key issues of brand and so on, and the type of hotel that will be best on the site.
Is that the same with design, Kevin? I mean, can you design a hotel on any site, or are there certain prerequisites?
All of those points are really important, but many clients come to us and throw us very unusual sites. Topography, for instance, can add a lot to the drama of a project and the success of a project. But equally, we've got a client at the moment who's come to us with a very steep site and wants a golf course on it. and that's pretty tricky.
Challenging, yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised that a number of clients don't come to us beforehand in terms of site selection.
Yeah.
I would say 99% of our clients come to us already with a site in mind. Yeah. So
I think that's certainly a point that I would make as well. A lot of people come to us. It's probably because that's the piece of land that they own. They say, well, this is the piece of land I've got. Mm-hmm. I want to do this with it. And sometimes you have to tell people it's more than just a pretty piece of land that's required. And
a couple of times we've told them not to develop it because of various reasons, particularly topography or shape. Yeah. Shape is another one.
Yeah.
Some clients come to us with very long, thin sites, which pretty difficult to design around.
Yeah. So in terms of sort of moving on then, so we've got a nice site now. Looking at the sort of market and financial feasibility. Robert, do you analyse your own feasibility, or do you rely on third parties, or do you just take what the owner says is granted?
No, it's a bit of all of those things. So any application from an owner comes with their feasibility, because we do want to understand what their expectations are. We're about to embark on a pretty long marriage, so we want to make sure that they're going in with the right expectations. But then, of course, we'll balance those against our own forecasts, and we will ask them for a third-party feasibility, so that we will triangulate around that and make sure that the next 15, 20 years are going to be profitable both for the owner and for us. We have a very close relationship with our owners. We are business partners. We actually have the IHG Owners Association, where we specifically work together to drive a common agenda. And if you get that wrong at the outset, it's very tough to create a successful relationship going forward. So very important that we triangulate around that feasibility.
Is that the same for you, Bart, or do you have a slightly different approach? Or?
No, I think it really depends. If it's a franchise, then we're going to ask for a third-party feasibility study to analyze and assess. We do spend a great deal of time still, if we get that in, to look at the demographics, check the STR data. We won't do projections in that case for obvious reasons. On the management front, we oftentimes do field work. So we'll go out, we'll send people out and talk to the demand generators and understand the competitive set. But I think what's important, back to my initial point, which is we're not going to add a hotel just to add a hotel. So we need to make sure that it makes sense in the market area. So we feel like we have that fiduciary responsibility to an owner. So we really take the time to look at the underwriting. And then we take it all the way through. So our guys do all the modeling and run the cash flow analysis and the NPVs, and we assess our deals based on our in-house underwriting.
One thing that we quite often see coming from brands is that if you build one of these, if you build our Holiday Inn Express, it's going to cost you X per room. If you build the Hampton, it costs Y per room. Is it as simple? Is it as simple as that, Graham, or is it?
It's probably not as simple as that, but I think it's essential that any developer has some benchmark to start from, some idea as to what this hotel in a normal average location is going to cost to build. And then they'll come to us and we'll do it for a lot less. But no, we use our experience as developers and builders to sort of explore site-specific constraints. So when we get the normal build cost for any particular hotel brand, we will recognize what the concerns will be and we will factor those in to come up with what is probably a more accurate assessment as to the cost to deliver. And it goes back to something Kevin had mentioned about the early engagement of architects in the process to assess viability and feasibility. Again, I would definitely suggest early engagement with a suitable contractor or development partner who can give you that experience that they have attained over years to actually get to a point where you have an early understanding of the cost of delivery of that hotel, because that's going to be so critical as to whether the whole thing adds up as the process continues.
And there always seems to be quite a lot of confusion about what's included in this. Does it include this? Does it include that?
Again, exactly right. Is it FF&E? Is it OS&E? Is it none of the above? Is it a shell in the public areas? There are so many options when it comes to hotel development and construction. It is genuinely important to engage early and bring people with the right experience in. And you'll probably hear that word a lot today. It's having the right experienced partners who can actually make it into reality rather than just a dream.
Robert, in terms of, obviously, at the point in which you first get approached by an owner, quite often they've already got some kind of a drawing done, or or normally at least a pretty picture or something. How far do you like your owners to have gone before they come to you, or would you rather that they came quite early on and engage with you straight away?
I think it's important that they've got some idea of what they can actually get on the site. As we said earlier, they're typically coming with a site that they've got their eyes on or already have secured. So then they've got to understand what you can feasibly get on that site, and that's going to play into the feasibility, because it's going to help you look at the sort of volume that you can create on the site, the room sizes, how many keys, the basic information you need to be able to get associated with that initial feasibility. So we do like to see that at an early stage to help understand the project. But then as it goes, as we take a deal forward, we start to negotiate the commercial terms, and we have, as I'm sure all my colleagues do and counterparts in our competition, have a deal approval process. Well, I like to bring, for every deal, what we call a property report. So our tech services team will have done an analysis, and there will be, at the very least for new build, a scheme design, so that, again, the expectations, the obligations of us and of the owner and their team are very clearly understood at the outset. Miscommunication, misunderstandings that aren't resolved prior to doing a deal get very expensive, and relationships can get pretty sorely tested later on if that hasn't been done. So very early on, some sort of concept design, and then as we go through the deal approval, we need to get some more information. Now, if it's a rebrand, which of course in the recent sort of financial situation the economy that we've found ourselves in, there we want to go right to the nth degree. I want to be able to tell the owner of a lesser branded or unbranded hotel exactly what they need to do. They have to have their eyes wide open. What is it going to cost them? Right down to, if they came into the meeting room and the bits and pieces that they need in a meeting room. So we do effectively a pre-opening checklist that gives them that complete clarity on what they need to do, and then they're in with their eyes open and we can get on and do it.
But how important is it to have an architect on board that's done hotels before? I mean, we tend to create this mystique about hotels being very complicated. Is there genuinely complications to this, or?
I think at the end of the day, it's very important. I think a lot of money is left on the table with owner developers, and Graham knows as well. We bring our tech services guys in. It's always a grind because we charge fees for that. But at the end of the day, these guys have done 400 hotels. They know where to save money. So I think it's important that that owner developers either engage with the brand early on or go to an ACOM, somebody like that has that experience, because when we have master planners that have been involved, they can make sure that it ticks the boxes for an international hotel. we have brand distinguishing features that are going to be limited with all of us that we can add on top of it. But at the end of the day, it needs to meet international standards. And what happens is, as you said, people have sites, they start to build, fait accompli, we come in, and if in today's environment where there are performance tests and financial thresholds, if we can't get a product that we can perform with, we're not going to sign up to those. So important that that owner developers see it from a cost standpoint, and also from a long-term knock-on effect with regard to the deal that they're going to try to negotiate.
Yeah. Just to add to that, I mean, you can spec build offices and you can spec build residential schemes, but it's madness to some degree to spec build a hotel scheme. You need that partner on from the earliest stages to understand exactly what the end game is.
Yeah, no, and that's a big difference with the hotel sector, clearly. Kevin, when's the right time for the architect to come on board? I mean, should you be right at the very beginning, or after some market work's been done, or what do you think?
The first person is market feasibility, for sure. We often say to the client, if you don't have the feasibility, then we don't want to start, because you can waste so much money. Some clients come to us with a dream, and obviously a dream is not necessarily going to be profitable. So feasibility, I would say master plan. If it's a larger site, master planning is more important than the architecture first, to make sure we get the building in the right place before we start designing the back of house or the doorknobs. But you're talking about timing of various things, and interestingly enough, you were talking there about the operator. The client can waste so much money if they don't get the operator involved early. Equally, there is a balance between these guys over-speccing things and providing a balance on construction costs. Oh, yeah. These guys are terrible.
You're slamming us now.
Especially Starwood, they're terrible. No, they have their standards, and I would say the most complex building would probably be a hospital or a laboratory. But a hotel is pretty close second, actually. And so it's very important to go and find that architect that does have that experience. And the engineer, particularly on the M&E side of things, they really do need to understand hotels, for sure.
And what about from your point of view, Graham? Presumably as a builder, you can identify things that might be able to save money in a design. I mean, is it important for you guys to be engineering?
Absolutely. I think Kevin hit the nail on the head there. There are so many costs tied up in the structure and in the M&E and on the cladding solutions that if it comes to us as a builder too far down the line, then you've got to unravel quite a lot of what actually has been done, and people don't like that. It's always better to be moving forward. So in terms of early engagement, I think for us that's something that we do all of the time for our clients, and we try to get in. Obviously there has to be some vision, there has to be some concept. It's very rare you'd start from a blank piece of paper unless it's our own development. But with our clients, they bring it to us at an early stage, and we help to get the right efficiencies from the start, so that value engineering isn't an afterthought. It's not, oh, here you go, McAleer and Rush, there's a fully designed scheme. What can you do to save us some money? It's more than that. It's about getting it right from the very beginning. And that could be anything from a different structural solution to a different facade finish on the elevations. And there are so many avenues to explore that, again, for inexperienced developers, it's so important to have the experienced team as partners.
But Kevin, surely all of that value engineering just gets in the way of nice, pretty design, doesn't it?
Totally. Totally. Connie surveyors are a nightmare. No, we in-house, we purchased Davis Langdon, so we probably have more Connie surveyors than anyone else. They're very, very good. The good thing about that group of people is we have offices all over the world, and I think one of the most important things is to have not only the international experience, but the local knowledge. It's no good having a quantity surveyor in London when your project's in Kyrgyzstan, where we're doing a project in Kyrgyzstan at the moment where all of the materials will have to be imported. And that's a huge impact on the construction cost. Yeah. So,
well, that's an interesting point, actually, because, of course, one thing is designing and building a hotel in a Western European country, but as you say, in some of these far-flung places or in Africa where a lot of stuff has to be transported there, it makes added complications.
We're doing a big project in the Maldives at the moment where literally every nut and bolt has to be imported, and our quantity surveyors are doing 5 projects in the Maldives right now, and that's a very, very detailed assessment of one, how it costs, how much it costs, but also the value engineering side and how you can generate value and save money, but also create something very, very beautiful at the end of the day.
And Bart, what are the problems with bad design? If you slip up and miss something, what things can come back and bite you later?
As I referred to it before, I think it has a knock-on effect. It's, it usually has to be rectified, which is a CapEx issue, which is, is ultimately an FF&E issue, and that impacts future redos, both soft and hard case goods. I think it also has a knock-on effect to the performance of the hotel, which then can lead to issues relating to the overall, bottom line and performance, and some of the financial metrics that may be involved with the deal. So I think we have to address those up front. So that's why it's important for our tech services teams to be involved. And I think the reality is, we're all in this space now with conversions. We're taking over buildings that are independently operated or owned, and/or have been branded in the past, and we come in and we just need to make sure that it works. I think what's important for owner developers is that they should build to international specs, and as I said, the brand differentiators are pieces that can get added onto that. But I think you got to get the bones right for the operation.
Yeah, and on that, Robert, obviously things like interior design, that's how long is a piece of string, isn't it? So how do you make sure that the hotel looks good but doesn't cost the earth?
Yeah, it is. And it's a very, very subjective area, and a lot of owners, or their wives or partners,
normally their wives
have a particular desire to really get involved in that part of the design, and that can be challenging, but we have to work with that. So what we've done is we've produced a bit of a toolkit. So at the first pass, we've got what we call our 3D design directives, and that's basically a photographic collection that represents the sort of look and feel of the brand. And then we supplement that with our design guides, which are brand specific, and basically trying, depending on which brand we're talking about, but trying to narrow the framework. So instead of having, let's say it's Holiday Inn, we could have, and anybody who's traveled from Europe and then to the Americas and then to the Middle East might see Holiday Inns or any of the other brands, frankly, that actually look quite different. So in the Middle East and in those emerging markets, your 3-star is suddenly a 5-star because they've gone over the top and they've got marble entries and so on. But ignoring that sort of cultural difference, within Europe, we're trying to just narrow the frame a little. So the design guide sets a bit more direction. It picks up the sorts of things like hallmarks and things that we need to get involved to get installed, so that you take some of the subjectivity out of it. And then, of course, it's up to our tech services team, our development architects and our interior design in-house, who not only have to say, no, you can't do that, it needs to be that, they have to say why. They have to be able to talk about the brand, the guest that we're targeting, and that's the ultimate point here, right? The guest that we're targeting to come and spend their money in this hotel.
And Graham, obviously in some of the more mature markets, perhaps here in Western Europe, there's probably been a bit of a movement towards design and build. Is that what are the advantages of that to the owner developer?
I think it depends on the contractor and on the way that the contractor is set up. Many contractors are still set up in a more traditional sense, where you've got to give them a fully designed scheme which they will price and then they will build for you. Probably 90% of what we do is design and build construction. It's ingrained in us, and there are advantages to it in terms of speed to get on site and flexibility during the actual construction process. So little changes can be made without really any impact on the time or the cost to the client. Fundamentally, you can can complete the building faster, meaning you've got beds occupied sooner. And from our perspective, as design and build contractors, we take all of the risk. So we will take the risk of any design alterations and site constraints, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll give a fixed price and we'll give a fixed program. And for us, design and build, and for our clients, design and build works very, very well.
So Kevin, we don't need architects then? Is that right? Or?
Design and build, dreadful people, dreadful people. No, there are clear advantages for sure in terms of program. It does depend on country though, because a number of countries in immature markets are not yet geared up for design and build. Even, and so in a number of those markets, we tend to go, if speed is important, then we would tend to go for a different procurement method, which is normally construction management, where you have a management firm that then manages all the subcontractors, and then you put it into packages so you can get on site much earlier that way.
From that perspective, I mean, that has its benefits. I think there needs to be a solution for each particular owner in their particular circumstance. Certainly design and build. If we're looking at design and build for one of our upscale brands, we will absolutely want to make sure that the technical specification is very tight because, and no offence, Ian, but if you leave the gate open, the design and builder is ultimately looking to create the right margin for themselves. And if you haven't laid out the technical specifications, the performance specs of the things that you're trying to create, you can find yourself with some slightly cheap, tacky solutions that you're not entirely happy with. So I think getting the level of quality set in the specifications is important in that design route.
I probably should respond on that in fairness. We, as a company, as a company, partnership in the development process is really fundamentally important. Having a good architect on there, having a good relationship with the technical people, and understanding from the outset what is required. And you know, I said when I sat down that we as a company have completed over 16,000 hotel rooms. All happy customers, I'm pleased to say. So we, you know, it is about that collaboration, it is about that partnership approach, and that will avoid those nasty surprises. But I also said at the outset, it's not for every contractor, but it works for us and it works for our clients.
We still love you, Graham, don't worry.
Thank you, Bart, and we like you too. Thanks.
Well, now that agreement has broken out, now might be a good time. Any questions from the audience on this sort of early stage of development, finding the right site, getting your feasibility done, timing of bringing the operator on board, when the architects should get involved, if at all. So any questions on that from the gentleman?
Having a name brand is a very important part of finance for the banks and so on. Can you smell a rat at a mile's distance when somebody comes to you very early and they just want the brand name to be able to go to the bank?
Yes, typically you can. You know when you're about to get hawked, fundamentally. But sometimes that's the game, you know, it's the game that we play. So, you know, we'll decide how much effort we're going to put in. It's the same for anybody, right? Whether you're a builder or a consultant or a brand, if you've got a thing to sell, you're going to take a view on how competitive the particular process is, right? So if you had 15 people bidding on something, you know, you're not going to spend 100,000 euros on submitting a tender that you've got a pretty slim chance of winning, and it tells you something about the owner as well. So yeah, you do have to sort of watch for that. But
yeah, it's usually when Robert refers them to me. I think the important thing is, you know, you're going to be a stalking horse, absolutely, because the brands are commodities, you know, and at the end of the day, people are going to shop you, and we just got to be pretty upfront with that. We're all pretty careful with that, you know, as far as not interfering with contracts, and more importantly, running up costs that are, you know, that it's just not going to yield. I think one of the prime examples of that, and Kevin can talk to this, is projects with residential, you know, where people come to you for the brand. They don't really care how the hotel is going to perform. They're in and out on the project development, and at the end of the day, we're stuck with the hotel and about 150 different owners that are in the residential that were sold a dream that we can't fulfill. So all these things, we've got to balance it because we have a limited number of resources. We have a limited number of people out pounding the pavement. We're all about growth, and if these deals don't come to fruition, then nobody thanks us at the end of the day how many leads we had. They just care about what we signed.
Anybody else? Any other gentleman at the back?
Yeah, my question is just a particular case when there is developer with a piece of land and he has he thinks bright idea to build a hotel here. And when he invites international consultant, what do you think whether the international consultant should know that first to study the market well and to say to the developer or the owner that yes, the number of rooms which you need it's not appropriate. Let's do it less. Or we think that the market is not ready for such kind of hotel. Change your concept. And what would be the main purpose of, not the aim of the consultant to reconvince the owner or to do what he wants? To calculate the cost of building and etc.
Okay. Well, that's probably one for me, I guess. I mean, certainly that's a situation that we come across quite frequently. An owner's got a pretty preconceived idea of exactly what he wants to do. We will then tend to go and do a study that may or may not confirm that. In some cases, he's done his homework and what he's come up with is fairly similar to what's required. In many other cases, there'll be a whole new proposal that comes out of that. That might be in terms of size, it might be in terms of market positioning, it might be the knowledge that we have of the variety of brands that are available, and maybe that one of them is particularly suited to that specific location. But I don't think there's anyone here that would disagree that having a sound market and financial feasibility as the basis of your decision making is almost always going to lead to a better process than if you just think about it in your sleep or in the shower and come up with an idea. So certainly a hotel is a big investment, there's a lot of capital, there's a couple of years of money going out before you start getting a penny back. It's a decision that you shouldn't take lightly, and it always amazes me that people are ready to embark on these processes without even spending a relatively small amount of money on a proper market study.
I'll give you two examples. Well, first of all, a lot of consultants will just draw pretty pictures just to get paid. I'll give you two examples. One, we were approached at a conference like this for a project in Mauritius, and I always wanted to work in Mauritius. It's a very beautiful place, and they came to us and they said, we have a big piece of land, we'd like to do lots of five-star hotels. So we got our feasibility guys over there first to have a look at it, and we very quickly realized that the market was saturated in 5 stars. And so we said to them, look, don't do 5-star hotels. And we found out that there was a huge gap in the market for local middle-income housing. So the plan that we drew was completely different from his dream of the 5-star hotel. So that's one example. Another example, a client came to us with a site halfway between Abu Dhabi and Saudi. And they said, this is a wonderful place. We want hotels and we want residential. And we went over there, and we very, very quickly realized that nothing would work there. It was quite strange because it also had a deep water terminal as well. So it was all stacking up right on the coast. And we have a brainstorming session normally for 3 or 4 days. And after the first day, we said to him, look, nothing's going to work here. I think we should save your money and we forego our fee. Mm-hmm. You just pay us for this one day and we'll go home and everything will be fine. But he'd obviously promised his boss that there was going to be this huge mixed-use development there. And he said, no, you can't do that. And I said, well, no, it's a waste of your money. And he said, no, stay for one more day and give me a PowerPoint of why we shouldn't develop. So we went through every single land use, starting with hotels and residential, which is what he wanted to do. But we went through offices, hospitals, prisons, everything, and proved to him that nothing would work. But we did put one fun slide in at the end, which was Dr. Evil's lair. Because with the deep water terminal in the middle of nowhere, Dr. Evil would have been very happy there. But yeah, so we do.
Did he build it?
No, we went home. We went home and saved his money.
Just one of the dangerous things for any hotel developers or would-be hotel developers is to let ego rule the head or let the heart rule the head. And it's not about that. It's got to fundamentally stack up. So it's a head decision, and it's not, I want to do a luxury hotel because that's what I want to show to the world. It's about what actually works in that location, and you cannot be ruled by ego or heart.
Mm-hmm. We can draw pretty pictures till we're blue in the face, but unless it makes money for the client or the operator, we're just wasting our money.
No,
you can come and look at our pretty pictures on the stand, by the way. We have our guy doing watercolours. Come and have a look. It's really good.
Okay, well, moving on now to, we've got two major brand operators here. But Graham, I'm going to come to you now with your, not with your constructor hat on, but put your developer hat on.
Yeah.
How do you go about choosing the operator?
Very sensitively. We work with most of the, we look for a lease as well, of course. No, we're very careful about it, but ultimately it is going to be the right site and the right solution for a particular brand, and you will know that. You'll do your own due diligence. You'll assess what is likely to fit onto the site. We talked about volume, we talked about room sizes. You'll assess the sort of macro and micro locational issues. Is this likely to be a budget brand, mid-scale, upscale? And you can start to narrow down who the likely brand partners are for that solution. And of course, you'll look around the location and see who already has representation. So I think you have to narrow down yourself, and then you can move to enter into discussions with your narrowed down choice of operators. And very quickly, those discussions will demonstrate to you who is most motivated to be your hotel partner in that location, and who ultimately is going to work with you to get a solution that is deliverable and viable and that will actually turn into reality.
So Bart, how do you acquire most of your new prospects? Are they repeat people coming back to you that have done things before? Are they coming to you directly? Are they coming to you through a consultant community, through a tender? Or how are you acquiring your?
I think it's all the above. I think the age of answering the phone is gone. I think one of the issues that we have is that we just need to make sure that we're networking and we're out there talking to, oftentimes the consultants such as yourselves, the ACOMs, the interior designers up front, because they're on the front end of these projects. The reality is people don't typically go out and oftentimes find brands. They'll say, I'll slot a brand into this afterwards, but let me get my project going. So it's important to get out and sell yourself to all those groups. Now, I think one of the biggest ways that we grow is through existing partners, and that's very important for us. So we make sure that we don't just do one hotel with somebody. We oftentimes say, listen, we would like to do much more with you, and that's. What's interesting about that is that used to be within the region. So if you did a deal with somebody in Dubai, that was usually in UAE. Now we have, I'm on the phone with my counterparts in Asia and Brazil and at various parts of the world, and people are global now, and they are moving around the world and doing projects all over the place. So we just got to make sure that we're talking internally, and making sure that we're ticking all the boxes. So. It's important to get out there. We have to prospect, It's not, for the brands, and I think Robert would say this as well, it's not so easy anymore. There's a lot of competition, so we got to make sure we're covering all our bases.
And how do you find it, Rob? Do you prefer it if the clients come directly to you, or do you like them to be advised by international advisors? Do you respond to tenders and?
Similar answer, all of the above. I mean, we're all about the growth, and if it's the right location for one of our portfolios, one of our brands in a portfolio, then we're going to go for it. So whether it's a competitive tender for Intercontinental in Milan, well done, or anything else, as it comes to us, we'll respond in the right way. We do have a lot of repeat business with our owners, so we've had some 60% of our signings with repeat owners. We've got a large number of the owners that have built up a portfolio, and that's actually one of the reasons that makes this such a great business. You're actually not only creating jobs in an economy, but you're actually creating personal wealth and success for your owner partners. And the number of sort of family businesses that have grown up with Holiday Inn and Holiday Inn Express in particular is beyond financially rewarding. It's actually quite fulfilling. Yeah.
And Graham, as a developer, do you find the brands differentiate themselves enough, or is one as good as the other? I mean, does it really matter who the operator is?
No, very much. I mean, look, you could be very blasé and say, well, one hotel is the same as the next, but that's not necessarily the case, because yes, while physically hotels are effectively beds and showers and TVs, what goes behind that is very, very different. And it will differ not just from brand to brand, but it will differ in location to location. So getting the right brand partner is fundamentally important, and that is very site specific, even within the same town.
And Robert, with the sort of advent of the internet and more people booking online and getting their own advice about where they should book, intuitively, should brands be becoming less important, or do you think they're becoming more important?
I think they're becoming more important. I think that delivering a differentiated, branded guest experience is what is going to create a relationship with a customer, with a guest. The OTAs and TripAdvisors and so on are tools, but ultimately what is going to drive some loyalty is the experience, and not just in the hotel, but the booking experience. The ability to review your hotel. I mean, interestingly, last year we introduced reviews on our own websites so that guests could post their reviews having booked direct. We received more reviews on our own websites than were posted on TripAdvisor last year, and I think that tells you something about the relationship, the choices that people are making and associating with brands ultimately that they trust, and trust is the key word. And those of you who may have seen our latest trends report, building on the one we did last year on the kinship economy, trust is the biggest thing, and being able to personalise the experience for guests so they feel respected. That's what a brand can give. I never heard anyone say that TripAdvisor made them feel respected, or that they feel particularly loyal. It's just a tool. So for me, brands are...
Well, as a major brand, how do you keep pace with all of the changes in technology and the ways that people book things, and that seems to be changing on a monthly, daily basis? How do you keep abreast of all of that?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's very competitive. Our drive to digital is, we like to think we're ahead of the game, but the reality is that our customers and guests are, oftentimes ahead of us, and certainly our competitors. So we've gone to mobile apps, and we're looking at mobile check-in. We'd like to get to 100% of the W's and lofts around the world as far as mobile check-in. But again, it's a challenge. We have issues with in foreign countries with passports and identification and government regulations on checking in along those lines. So we got to try to keep up with it. We also can't. I think with this digital age, when we're all focusing on it, we also got to make sure that we're not forgetting about what Robert said, which is the personalization. People want to be treated special when they go into hotels. And I think we've got to be really, really careful about getting into that digital wash and forgetting about the basics, because people at the end of the day are going back to basics. They want simple, they want to be recognized. Do they want to use their tools when they walk into the hotel and have that ease of access with mobile apps? Yes, but they also want to make sure that it's a memorable stay. It's tough. It's got to be an area of focus.
Mm-hmm. It's not, because when we talk about personalisation, you're absolutely right, but it's not easy. It's not about knowing that they like a particular white wine, and if they're an elite loyalty guest, then they get that white wine in their room when they arrive. That's a bit passé. In the branded world, you try and create a consistent experience, and then you try and create consistent sort of engagement. So you might train your front desk team in how they might interact. If you write a standard operating procedure and they say that thing wrote every time to every guest, that's not personalisation. It's about training the character and the attitude that those people can exude the brand and give that experience that the guest can then feel truly respected, as opposed to, you just did that McDonald's thing to me and I got my cheeseburger and left.
And as an industry, we do that a lot. This whole, on check-in, this welcome back. That it astounds me when I go to our hotels and other hotels where people say welcome back, and you just want to look at the person and say, I've never been here. So I think, to Robert's point, I think one of the things with personalization is we're trying to take that technology and we're trying to leverage it, because some of the technology is amazing, but we got to work that in so that personalization is filtered through the technology. But the end piece is something that's very personal. So somebody that's booking a personal room in one of our hotels at a W is also an event planner, and he or she is trying to book an event, for 100 people. We understand what their past has been, where they go, where they travel, and then we can come back and say, hey, by the way, if you're looking for a venue, here's some options on that app. So that's some of the things that we're trying to do, and that's kind of new personalization.
So just before we go into the development phase itself, any questions from the audience about how you find your best operator, how the operators work? Gentlemen.
Yeah, it's just a question really for Graham, actually, to go into a bit more detail about the process as a developer. You go to select your brand and how that interfaces with the early stages of the design process.
Sure. We're coming from the perspective of having quite a lot of experience in hotel developments and construction. So as a consequence of that, we internally have the ability to narrow down the selection of who are likely to be the right partner for us as far as the brands go. If you're a less experienced developer and you don't have that background knowledge, then you will need to go, to use the word, to an experienced advisor who can actually give you that guidance, who can help you to narrow down the options so that you don't go off in a tangent in the wrong direction because it's something that, again, you feel is right in your heart that you want to do. It's so that it's a cold-headed business decision. And Mark, for example, and ACOM are exactly the sorts of organisations who can give that sort of advice where it's necessary. For us, it's basically we will look at the site constraints, we will look at the surrounding micro, macro locational factors, economic factors, and we will narrow it down on that. And frankly, we have a very strong relationship with most of the major brands, and we can just make a couple of phone calls, and we'll know just from those phone calls who is likely to be up for working with us on this and who is not, and then we can really move forward in that direction with some certainty that that's where we will end up.
And as a developer, how important is, obviously, particularly in mature markets, the developers all want their exit before they start at the beginning, and having some kind of fixed lease is very key. I don't think we can have any discussion about development without touching on the lease versus management contract thing. How important is that to you?
Look, it's fundamentally important, and it's not that I think any developer would have a particular preference and say, I just love leases, I want to do leases. It's not about that. It's about what is actually going to make this financially viable and deliverable. And historically, there has always been this concept that we have to have a lease because that's what the investors want, and that's the way that we can move this forward. But there are investors who will support alternative solutions. There are investors who will move forward on management agreements. And those could be management agreements with guarantees or not with guarantees. Location is a very strong factor on that as well. If you're developing in a really key gateway city like Paris, Berlin, or London, then you're going to get a lot more support from investors who really can be a lot more flexible in their approach. But frankly, if you're developing in more regional locations, then the financial viability will come into play, and that's when you really will need to be pushing for the certainty of return that will give the investors or the funders the confidence to back you to do that development.
Well, I'm not going to ask Bart or Robert what their view is on leases, because I think we've got a pretty good idea what their reply will be. So let's move into the actual development phase now. So we've got our site, we've secured our funding, we're going ahead to build the hotel. Robert, technical services is a big part of what you offer in the early stages. Is that genuine value add, or is it just brand police?
No, it's genuine value add. So I guess you'd expect me to say that. So why don't I tell you that just last year, at the end of last year, I got a letter from an owner in Turkey who was singing the praises of our in-market technical services team, who had replanned with their designer the building and saved them several $1 million and increased the room count. So, and I get letters like that a lot throughout the year. So we talked earlier on about, hotel designers, is it a specialism? It is. You need to have the experience, and the point is that our teams have more experience in designing hotels and have seen more hotels. It's been their job for years and seen all sorts of architects' designs come across the table, that they have the experience to spot the pitfalls, to help reshape, replan, and make spaces effective. The ability to design more open spaces rather than very discrete, separated spaces means that you can start to save money on staffing, for example, and be more flexible there on the multi-skilling your team in the hotel. So that's what comes with a technical services agreement. And yes, there's a little bit of brand police. We're going to be giving them the design guides. We're going to be working through. We're going to be approving a model room and designs and so on. But that's quite a small part of it. And if you've done that piece I described earlier on, up front, those requirements are all very clear, and it's not really an argument then.
And Bart, given that all of this sort of technical service approach, as Robert's just said, is all about adding value to the project and making sure that it's right for you as the operator, is that something that the brand should be charging for, or should that be given as part of the operator's contribution to the development?
There's a lot of value add with tech services. At the end of the day, I think one of the things that I do think we should be charging for it because I think there's value there. Now, with that said, I haven't walked away from a deal over tech services not being paid for. One thing that I will say is that we will, that the full scope of tech services will be in place, because we need to make sure that we can help the owner-developer build a hotel that's very efficient at the end of the day. And as Robert said, there's an element of the brand policing there, because you're going to want us to deliver. You're going to want our systems and platforms to deliver, and we need to have our, the elements that are bespoke to the brands in there. One of the things that I've been doing with our tech services team is, that value proposition, because we're getting layered on top of interior designers, architects, landscape planners, et cetera, et cetera. When we come in the back end, we're already having a discussion about fees and structure. So when you get to the tech services piece, it becomes almost academic. The owner doesn't want to hear anything more about fees. So one of the things that we're doing is we've been working on a lot of stories as far as where we've added value and quantified that value add, and putting owner developers in touch with other developers and owners just to get that value proposition. So again, it's mixed. I think there's a lot of pressure in the market. Robert can say that as well, as far as getting paid for tech services. But it's value add, and I think it needs to be there.
And as coming from sort of architectural background, do you find that input useful? Do you find it clashes with what you do? Is that something that you? I mean, how involved is the architect once the construction is underway?
Well, just talking about standards first and value add. Here's a plug for you, by the way. Because Starwood are the first people to rewrite their standards for sustainability. And we talked a lot about physical things, but there are hidden things. And so we're helping them rewrite their sustainability chapter. And there's both financial value add and obviously CSR value add there. So that's an interesting example of them ahead of their game. We actually did a benchmarking study of all of the major hotel operators. They didn't come out the best, they didn't come out the worst, but at least they are thinking ahead, because the customers do now look for those things in the design. In terms of once you're on site, first of all, the brand standards are extremely important for us, because we know that there are sort of parameters or brackets that we work within. I think you always have to balance that against costs, because as I joked earlier, these guys would have everything everywhere, but we do need to balance that and still provide that customer service that they're looking for that particular brand. Yeah.
I'm conscious that we're coming towards the end of our time, so there's a couple of things that we still need to cover. Graham, once construction is underway, as an owner, am I better to go for a fixed price contract with penalties, or should I just let you guys get on with it and open book and honestly deliver me the best hotel?
I probably prefer fixed price with no penalties, Mark, but yeah, look, because of the way that we operate as a company, we tend to go down the design and build route, where we will give fixed prices and a fixed program, and we will work to that and we will make that happen. But it does depend on the contractor partner that you've got. It's not going to work for every arrangement, and it does require a certain amount of collaboration and a certain amount of partnership. And if that communication and partnership and collaboration is not there, then it's a recipe for disaster. So you've got to have the right team, the full design team involved from the early stages.
Mm-hmm. And coming back quickly to the operators, the sort of the pre-opening management, again, that can be anything from a very short period to a long period, being as how the owner pays for all of that, and yet the operator specifies what's involved. Is this sort of a little bit out of control, or do you have fixed mechanisms for dealing with that?
No, I don't think it's out of control. I mean, yes, it varies in the length of time depending on the brand that you're building. I mean, if you're trying to get an Intercontinental ramped up and ready, that's going to take a longer time. A lot of key accounts and engagements that you need to get your sales and marketing director into. If it's a Holiday Inn Express, you practically turn up, in a matter of weeks beforehand, and obviously it's franchised, but typically. And you'll be as good as full from day one. So it does vary by brand, but absent that, your ramp up is going to be fairly slow and painful. So I think it's important.
And Bart, how do you deal with that sort of pre-opening phase? Is that something that is it the same for every hotel, or do you?
Similar to what Robert said, I think it's different. So, for the most part, we want to make sure that we open the hotel on brand and in the right way. So we have those pre-opening discussions up front. We typically attach those pre-opening budgets to our management agreements. So there's not a lot of surprises, because what you don't want to have happen is you don't want to sign a deal and then all of a sudden get to a point where you're ready to open and the owner didn't budget for X. So we usually have those conversations, and those are robust conversations, but at the end of the day, I think it gives everybody a sense for what the scope is and what the budget is. So important.
Okay, a couple last questions from the audience. Anybody got any points they'd like to raise? Gentleman at the front.
Hi, I'm Paul Shaw with John Manor Partners. We're project managers this way, like ACOM, but smaller. Thanks for your answers today. It's really sort of candid discussion. No doubt there are owners in the room now who want to be good owners, because that helps you reach your goals and objectives. What does a good owner look like?
Bart.
Talk about silver loafers.
I think we've touched on quite a few things that we'd be looking for in a good owner. That's some sensible upfront discussions, a willingness to really understand the viability, the need for quality support, capable support to help them get the feasibility right, to get the design right. Engaged with the brand up front, not building their hotel on spec and then saying, well, I'll see if I can shoehorn a brand in here. And someone who is committed to that long-term win-win solution, that's prepared to discuss a deal in the sense of creating value and then sharing appropriately in that value.
Drive and passion. If the client has got a good team around them, but drive and passion, a champion to really move the project forward in the best possible way. That would be the best asset, I would say, from a client.
They need to be direct. You know, if the model is, if a brand is a commodity and that's what they're looking for, then just be upfront about it. You know, and we can assess that as well. I think with us, if we understand the owner's mission and what they want to ultimately achieve, then that solves a lot of problems. I think when people start playing games and not being forthcoming with where they're trying to go, then that makes for a complicated relationship, which usually doesn't last.
And Graham, I guess you'd say that you're the perfect owners, yeah?
Absolutely. I think it comes down to whether it's a branded partner or a development partner of ours, or whatever it happens to be. I think really important is to say what you will do and do what you will say out of what you've said, and just stick to it and be straight with each other and keep the communication and collaboration going. That's the most important thing.
Okay, well, we're coming to the end of our time now. We're just a couple of minutes before lunch. So we had a brief discussion about the importance of location, getting that right. We looked at the importance of having a proper feasibility study done, both from a market point of view and from a financial point of view. We looked at how the timing of when you should get architects involved and trying to get as many of the parties together right at the beginning of the project, planning that process through, making sure that you have a careful selection of the operator so that you get the right operator, not just the one that was most convenient for you, making sure you got all of your funding in place at the beginning, and then in the development phase, just following all of that through to completion. So just before we go, I think the sort of final sort of what, you know, there will be owners and developers in the room here. What's the one single piece of advice that you would say is most important, starting with you, Bart?
I think what I just said is understand what your ultimate goal is and what you want to achieve, and start off with that in mind, and get the right advisors in place, and you'll save a lot of time and effort and money.
Robert?
Pick the right brand.
Does it begin with I?
Sell.
I would say the best money that the client can spend is on an economic feasibility study. It's a very, very small amount of money compared to the overall construction value.
And Graham?
I think for me, it's got to be the right delivery team. You can have the best vision in the world, but if you do not have a delivery team with the capability and the skill set and the experience to make that a reality, it's not going to happen, or it's going to happen and it's going to cost you twice as much as it should have cost you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, a big thanks to the panel, and thank you for your time and for being here.